Hi everyone, my name is Shauna. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a book haul. So the first thing I wanted to start off showing is kind of like a bookish item. I usually listen to audiobooks when I do puzzles, so I decided to get myself a new puzzle. The company is Workman Puzzle, but I got this off of Book Outlet, and it's called Free to Just Be. I think like if you search that up, you'll find this one. But yeah, I got this just because I love the colors. I think it's really pretty, and it is 1,000 piece, so it usually keeps me pretty entertained for a long time while I chip away at an audiobook. So that's my first item, bookish related. So the first book I want to show off is one that I've already read because I read this for an IRL book club that I do with some friends. It's called The Sword of Kaigan by M.L. Wang. This is a story about basically a mother and a son in the peninsula, or the island of Kaigan. They are historically and traditionally a family and basically a society of fighting like families. So they all have certain abilities that they use. In this case, they're kind of based around elements. So some people can use like water-based, like magic or abilities, air-based, fire-based, that kind of thing. And we follow this family as they deal with a conflict that's coming to their shores that they weren't really expecting to happen. The mother has basically put down her sword, and the son is only just old enough now to kind of be in his first real like battle or conflict. So we follow them and see what happens. It was a beautiful book. I have it kind of tabbed, a little hard to see, but it was fantastic. I loved this book, and yeah, I was really glad to pick this up. The next one I have is The Appeal by Janice Hallett, which says, the Fairway Players, a local theater group, is in the midst of rehearsals when tragedy strikes the family of the director and his wife, the play's star. Their young granddaughter has been diagnosed with a rare form of cancer, with an experimental treatment costing a tremendous sum. Their castmates rally to raise the money in order to give her a chance at survival. But not everybody is convinced of the experimental treatment's efficiency, nor of the good intentions of those involved. As tension grows within the community, things come to a shocking head at the explosive dress rehearsal. The next day, a dead body is found, and soon an arrest is made. The trial is coming up, and we follow two young lawyers as they sift through the materials of emails, messages, and letters with a growing suspicion that the killer may be hiding in plain sight. All the evidence is there, just between the lines, waiting to be uncovered. So yeah, this is one of those kind of like mixed media, multimedia books where it's written in like prose, but it's also got kind of like emails and letters in different formats. I've heard really good things. I've read one other Janice Hallett book, and I cannot remember the name of it off the top of my head. And I liked it. It was pretty solid. I actually thought the like kind of twists and like the way it was written was like very, very clever, but I think I was struggling a little bit with that like format. It was just on my ebook at the time, and I don't know, I feel like I would vibe with like mixed media. So yeah, I'm really excited to try this, and I'm also a big like cozy mystery person, so I'm excited. The next one I have is Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukafka. This one says that we are following in the tradition of Long Bright River and the Mars Room, a gripping and atmospheric work of literary suspense that deconstructs the story of a serial killer on death row through the eyes of the women in his life, from the best-selling author of Girl in Snow. So you're following this story through the eyes of a mother, a sister, and a homicide detective kind of involved in this case. This I have heard nothing but phenomenal things about, so I'm very, very excited to pick this up. And it's also just as like a random thing when you notice your bookshelves, you're like, I honestly don't own that much purple. So it's kind of fun just as like a visual where I'm like, this will be like my one purple book. I'm genuinely looking behind me right now. I'm like, the tip of this is purple, but the rest of it is green on the bottom. Like, anyways, please spot purple for me, because I'm like, this might be one of my only ones. Anyway, it's going to be good. Next, I have Severance by Ling Ma. This says, is it the end of the world or just another day at the office? This one is kind of like post-apocalyptic fiction, little dystopian kind of, you know, realism, sci-fi. Like, it's going to be funky. I'm kind of going into this book a little bit unknown just because I know I'm going to be surprised at whatever is happening and the kind of like humor, satire elements of it. So I kind of want to go into it unknown. And I also really love these covers. Like, I'm loving just like a solid, like all purple cover, all pink cover. Like, I don't know, I'm just loving these. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Next, I have Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ning. This, of course, is the author of Little Fires Everywhere and Everything I Never Told You. Two of like really, really good books. You actually would have seen me recommend those books in my last video for like summer recommendations. They're fast reads, they're very entertaining, and they're really interesting. So yeah, this is her other book, which says 12-year-old Bird Gardner lives a quiet existence with his loving father, a former linguistic who now shelves books at a university library. His mother, Margaret, a Chinese-American poet, left without a trace when he was 9 years old. He doesn't know what happened to her, only that her books have been banned, and he resents that she cared more about her work than about him. Our Missing Hearts is an old story made new of the ways supposedly civilized communities can ignore the most searing injustice. It is about the lessons and legacies we pass on to our children and the power of art to create change. This is just like an auto-buy author for me. I was really looking forward to picking this up when it first came out, but I just, at the time, just didn't pick up a copy. And now I have this on my shelf, so I have no excuse. I am so looking forward to this one. Next, I have Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This will be my first ever Ali Hazelwood book. I'm not a huge romance person. Like, I do dip into it every once in a while, depending on kind of my mood and depending on the season. But Ali Hazelwood is like insane. She has so many books out now, and this just happened to be one book that I saw on Book Outlet that was kind of a trope that I like, which is like the main character here, Elsie, is basically she is like a physicist. She studies thermodynamics, and on the side of doing that, she also does a like fake dating service for people using her like people-pleasing skills. She can kind of curate herself to be what people want, and that helps pay the bills. As someone who is teaching, in this case, I think she's an adjunct professor and she's trying to get tenure. So, but anyway, she meets kind of like a rival. Who we have is Jack Smith, who is also in the physics department, and he kind of runs like the physics department at MIT, and he basically has her dream job. So they clash because, surprise, surprise, she's in a fake dating service with his brother. So it's fun. It's kind of wacky. I love the trope of it. I am genuinely so looking forward to this. But yeah, this is my first one. I'm kind of nervous that I'm going to read this and become absolutely hooked, and then I'm going to want to read all of her books, but that's okay. That's a good problem to have. Up next is The Tyranny of the Faith by Richard Swan. I'm actually not going to read the synopsis. I'm not going to read the back. I'm not going to read anything. If anyone knows why, it's because I still have not read The Justice of Kings. I looked away because I had to remember what it was. That's the first book. This book was at Chapters. It was $8. It's a hardcover. It's like usually $37. I literally only bought this because I'm so excited to read that book and I wanted to have the next one on my shelf. I cannot read this or I will spoil it for myself. If you know what this is about, good. Enjoy that knowledge. I will not know until I've read the first one. Next, I have The Spare Man by Mary Robinette Knoll. Hope I'm saying that last name right. Which is Tessa, a brilliant inventor and heiress, is on her honeymoon via an interplanetary space liner. Cruising between the moon and Mars, she's traveling incognito and reveling in her anonymity. Then someone is murdered, and the festering chowderheads who run security have the audacity to arrest her spouse for the murder. Armed with banter, martinis, and her small service dog, Tesla is determined to solve the crime so that the newlyweds can go back to canoodling. So yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a little bit of like a space opera, sci-fi mystery. It's going to be a good time. I also own this book on my e-reader, but I also found a really good deal at Chapters. Sometimes they sell these hardcovers for like $8 and I just can never refuse. So yes, I also picked this up. There is a bookmark in it right now because my partner started picking this up. Every time I bring a book out home, he immediately grabs it. It's going on my list as soon as he's done reading it. Now I'm going to get into my next kind of stack here, which is nonfiction. So I have Half Bads in White Regalia by Cody Catano. I believe I'm saying that name right. Ask any half bad to tell you the story about how their bad half came to be, and they'll probably begin with the buckle. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. It says that a family tries to learn from the mistakes of past generations in this whirlwind memoir from a wholly original voice. So yeah, we have Cody. His mom discovered her Anishinaabe birth family and the 60s scoop origin story, and then his dad is a Portuguese immigrant, and so he is kind of split like between two worlds, and with that mixed identity comes a lot of questions and questioning of self, so we kind of explore that through this memoir. I'm really looking forward to it. It's also a stunning cover. I don't know who designed this, but this is, like, I just love the simplicity of it. It's really beautiful, so looking forward to it. And I love memoirs. I'm always big on memoirs. Up next, I have Somewhere We Are Human, edited by Raina Grand and Sonia Kunsaka? Gina Kunsaka? I'm sorry, I'm very bad about pronouncing names. Sorry, I apologize. Which is authentic voices on migration, survival, and new beginnings. So a unique collection of groundbreaking essays, poems, and artwork by 41 migrants, refugees, and dreamers, including award-winning writers, artists, and activists that illuminate what it is like to live undocumented today. So yeah, a while ago, you probably would have seen in like another book haul, I bought a book called, sorry, I have to find it. Oh, Our Migrant Souls by Hector Tovar. And that was a beautiful book. It was really, really interesting, actually. And I read another book, which was, sorry, I'm going to have to remember. Oh, I forget the name of it now. I read it literally like 2 weeks ago and I forget the name. But again, it was someone who also was talking about being, oh, Dear America. That's what it's called, Dear America. And it's about basically a journalist who revealed that he was undocumented in the United States for 25 years while working his way up to, he wrote for like the New York Times, he wrote for the Washington Post, and all that time he was undocumented, and then he finally wrote his own story in an article and revealed that. And it was really, really interesting. And again, it's just a topic that I don't know a lot about, of being undocumented, but it really opened my eyes to some perspectives of just the privilege and the luck that I had being born in the country that I did. Fun fact, neither of my parents were actually born in the country that I was, but they migrated to Canada and had me, and so I'm very lucky to be a Canadian citizen. But and I mean that as in, like, I'm lucky that I was born in the country that I was born in, and I know that that's not the case for a lot of people, and there are a lot of people struggling to move to places that are safer than their homelands. So I do want to learn a lot more about migration, refugees, climate refugees, everything and anything that I can read about, I want to read about. And sort of on the similar vein, I have Border and Rule, Global Migration, Capitalism, and the Rise of Racist Nationalism. So again, that part of like global migration is really interesting to me. Again, people trying to like cross borders, borders being completely political, borders being completely arbitrary, and borders being like very, very, very many instances of borders crossing people as opposed to people crossing borders. Borders that crossed communities, separate communities from each other, from their traditional lands. Yeah, it's very, very interesting and very geopolitical in a way that I am not clever enough to understand, but I do want to learn about. And this is by Harsha Wali, and yeah, it says, in Border and Rule, one of North America's foremost thinkers and immigrant rights organizers delivers an urgent global account of the migration crisis and the function of borders across political, social, cultural, and economic systems. A must-read in these times of crisis, Border and Rule is a stirring call to revolution. Really looking forward to it. Next, and last in my kind of nonfiction stack is The Myth of Normal, Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture by Gabor Mati, with Daniel Mati, his son. This got recommended to me by my therapist. Won't lie, this is super hefty. I am dreading picking this book up, not for a bad reason, only for like, I know that this is going to be pretty triggering in a lot of ways, especially around like trauma and this idea of like, especially in this like default. I don't know if a lot of people know about like neurodiversity, neurotypical. Neurotypical is obviously a very loaded term, as in like who is deemed kind of like typical, and in the way that they perceive the world, and everyone else is deemed different, in this case neurodivergent. Anyways, I think it's going to be a really interesting read. I think it's going to be really hefty. I think it's going to be really heavy, but it is a topic that I do want to again learn more about. I've talked about this in previous videos. I read a lot about CPTSD, or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is just kind of a branch off of that with trauma and toxic culture, how it perpetuates a mental health crisis in a lot of countries across the world. So anyways, looking forward to it, but also kind of dreading it. The last 3 books I wanted to talk about are books that I actually just picked up because I love them and I never physically owned copies of them. So the first one I have is Salt Slow by Julia Armfield. This is a collection of short stories by this author. I think she has a new book coming out later this year, and I am so excited about it. She also wrote like Our Wives Under the Sea. Yeah, she's a very, very talented author. And in her electrifying debut, Julia Armfield explores women's experience in contemporary society mapped through their bodies. I'm going to leave it there because these are short stories. Like, you will sit down in an afternoon and be absolutely absorbed in her writing. She is phenomenal. I love these books. I love these stories, and I wanted to own the book physically. The next one I had was actually a gift from a friend, which I absolutely adore, and she gave me a copy of Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett. I've read both of these books just on audio, so I don't physically own them. And if you don't know, Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands is book 2 to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia for Fairies. So I don't want to kind of give the synopsis away from this if you haven't read that book, but it's fun. It's whimsical. It's very academic in the sense that we're actually kind of study these like whimsical creatures of fairy and fae. And yeah, we go along with it. It is very, very precious. It's very sweet, and the books are so pretty. So thank you to my friend who gave me this. Appreciate you. And the last book that I have is A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. This is book 2 in the Elements of Cadence series. I have read this duology in full, the first one, of course, being River Enchanted. I laugh because I have to remember. I think it's River Enchanted. I loved those books. They were like top favorites of mine when I read them a couple years ago. And I've read Rebecca Ross's new duology, The Letters of... You know when you can't remember what the actual name is? Anyways, it's like, you know, Ruthless Vows and a letter... a letter what? Divine Rivals. Those 2 I have read. I did not love that duology as much as I loved this one, so I wanted to physically own a copy when I could get a deal, and Book Outlet had this on for like $7.99, so I picked it up, and yeah, I just wanted to mention it. It's beautiful. It is whimsical, and again, I don't want to give you the synopsis of this one because it is the second book, but I would say absolutely pick up A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. It is probably my favorite book of all time written by her, and it was like my favorite book last year that I read, or something ridiculous. Anyway, A River Enchanted. It's a good time. Okay, that's my stack. I will say this is probably the biggest book haul I've done on my channel so far. I say that like a question. I think I've done one other book haul on this channel. But yeah, it was a blast. Like I said, a bit of a mix, some gifts, some Book Outlet deals, and a little bookish accessory with a puzzle. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care. Bye.